Guess it's as good a time as any. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call us to order. It is 6:30, and this is our February 15th Planning Board meeting. And I'll just begin by reading the roll. John, myself, present. Rebecca?
I'm here.
Phil?
Yep.
Neil?
Present.
Mike?
Yep.
Mark? Not present. And Susan?
Here.
And then alternates, Zach, not present. Michael? And Peter, not present. So, Michael, I will seat you as a voting member this evening.
Thank you, Chair.
And we'll start with the review of minutes from the February 1st meeting. I just noticed one thing, and going through this that caught my eye. I believe Brian's name might be misspelled.
Which one?
Brian?
Oh.
I believe there's a Y, I think. No, instead of an I or a Y. And there's two L's, I think.
I think maybe, I'm not sure. I think Brian is correct.
Oh, you might want to double check.
Does anyone have a spelling handy of it?
Is he still in the pile of old
I
name
don't.
tags?
Not that I know of. No. I can look it up
Okay.
afterwards. That's fine.
Oh, Mark's here.
Dutile is D-U-T-I-L-L-E. Two L's.
Who else? Is it an I or a Y? Do you know?
B-R-Y-A-N. Facebook to the rescue.
Thank you. It's definitely
There he is.
Good evening.
It's a good.
What's up, guys? Sorry.
Good catch.
All right, I just seated Michael for.
Quite all right. He beat me here.
Yep.
He's quick on the draw.
Okay. He's going to still, of course, join us in conversation and discussion.
I like to listen.
All right. How are we doing on the minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of February 1 with the correction of Brian Dutile's name.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay, an abstention. Any opposed? All right, so the minutes are approved with that minor correction. Joseph, do we have any communications received?
No additional communications. The applications in front of you have not been any revisions since then, other than a note from, I believe there is in each staff report, departmental comments from the Water and Sewer District and the Fire Department. The police did comment, but the comment was just that there was no concerns.
Okay.
So that's the only communication at this point.
Okay. Was there communication from Fire about the OSRD discussion we had?
Oh, yes, they did send over a, good point. They did send over a explanation of how they consider building separation under code, and I can distribute that to the board if you'd like. I did send it along to Barrett.
Okay.
But I can certainly have that available for the board too.
Is there a short version in your head offhand, or?
It's the general, the general sense was that it comes down in many ways to the height of the building and how the building is constructed. So, and understandably so. He said it's more formula based than an easy number. He said if you want an easy number, 25 to 30 feet is a good range,
And that's 25 to 30 feet between buildings, not
Correct.
like from the lot line or anything.
Yeah, that's correct. I believe that's the range that he was suggesting, but he did note that it was going to partially be based on how the buildings are constructed and the height of the buildings. But he gave a pretty thorough, lengthy response, which was very helpful. But I can print out the, the detailed
Okay.
version and give that out to everyone.
Thank you.
Fine.
All right then. So moving forward, we have applications and public hearings. First up, we have a site plan review extension request for North Country Development Group, 222004, a request from North Country Development Group for an extension of the one-year timeframe to meet the conditions of the site plan approval granted March 16th, 2023, for the reconfiguration and expansion of the existing ski lodge at 151 Tenny Mountain Road. And so, yeah, so this is, if you remember, a site plan review and approval we granted a little less than a year ago, so they're coming in for an extension. And, yeah, so we'll hear that and hear some updates and information, hopefully. And is there anyone to speak to that on Zoom, maybe, or?
Yeah, Stephen Kelly is on.
Oh, okay, thank you. I was scanning the room, I didn't see you.
Apologize. I wanted to wait till I had a moment to speak.
So if you'd like to say a few words about where we are and any updates you might have?
Sure, absolutely. First, just say hello to everyone here in attendance in person. And of course, joining virtually. I haven't seen you folks in a little while, so hope everybody's doing well. So we're looking for an extension really for the lodge. When we first began, the focus of me was really to try to build a beautiful lodge that I thought the community would really embrace and need. The more we started to understand the engineering on the mountain and the infrastructure and what the community truly does need, which is improving the roads and, fixing what is a bit of a, broken sewer system based on some storms from many years ago, in excess of a decade ago. So we've been working with Plymouth Village Water and Sewer on a revamped sewer system design, as well as what will be a revamped water design eventually, and also looking at the lodge and the mountain itself in terms of what it needs for physical infrastructure upgrades. We had realized that the lodge is not the top of the priority. It's getting the roads and the infrastructure improved for the community. We've actually put a lot of money into the infrastructure already this year. We did some road repairs where we could. Some are beyond the repair stage, so we're actually working still for what might be a temporary solution for one of the roads, Melvin Roads, which is really in a state of disrepair. But in the bigger picture, we're working with the state and what is going to be the town, but also the federal programs that would provide for a coordinated effort to get the roads completely replaced up there, which is going to be a huge addition for the whole community to actually get to that stage. But we're working closely right now with some folks from the state and some of the federal organizations for some grants that will help us do some of that work, which will restore all of the roads, and by that point the water, the sewer systems, and then for Tenny Mountain itself. As much as it would be beautiful to have a new lodge, the reality is the community needs better snowmaking, better lists that they're comfortable with. So we've really pivoted and really spent the last year and a half doing a lot of engineering on the mountain to put all of those programs in place. So this year we plan to put a whole new snowmaking system in. We're working on the design of that right now, but once the weather breaks, we're going to try to repipe the whole mountain. If we don't get the whole mountain done this year, we're going to get probably 80% of it, which is all the critical parts that need to be rebuilt and replaced. So that by this point next year, we'll have a state-of-the-art snowmaking system in, which is going to allow for much better skiing for the community. This year we also rebuilt the 3 old lifts that are there as much as we could. The folks have had a chance to ski there. I'm sure they've already noticed some of those improvements. And the plan is to get the existing infrastructure where it needs to be to get through probably 3 or 4 year cycle till we get to the point we're going to put new lifts in. And it's really at that stage we'll replace the existing lodge to go with those new lifts, which is really probably the second phase of construction. What we're working on right now, which will be the first phase. Again, the things we looked at for community needs are there's a big demand for housing at multiple levels. We've talked before about workforce housing, market rate housing, luxury housing, so all of which are in demand in the town and in the region. So we're really looking at that as the first phase that we'll break ground on. And really the lodge is just an amenity upgrade. The lodge as it sits today, people do enjoy it. I think they'll really enjoy the new lodge when we get to that point in building it, but right now, it certainly, it satisfies the need of the community, and really it's more important we solve for some housing, in particular road upgrades, the sewer upgrades. The water is actually not a heavy reach, so that's easy enough, but, really continuing with the revamping of Tenny Mountain so it can actually thrive, and be a full ski season resort, but also a 4-season resort, which we're also working on that right now. We're working on designing a whole new mountain biking terrain. We actually just opened a disc golf course in end of October, which will be open to the public in the spring, and also working on some other amenities that can be available to the public for really a 4-season cycle. So all that's kind of in process. We spent a lot of money with consultants and engineers really looking at what is available, what will work, all part of a long-term master plan that we hope to be able to present to the public within probably by the end of Q2. Earliest to be Q3, but we're hoping by the end of Q2 to have a more informed master plan. Would put a lot of this on paper that would help people understand what we're working towards. So with all that said, the focus has been in engineering that will inform long-term sustainable building and value add to the community. And it was also made the decision that to upgrade the lodge just isn't necessary, where it's more important to upgrade all the other infrastructure before we get to the lodge replacement.
Well, thank you very much for the update, and that's a lot of exciting news. So it's good to hear all that. If I was hearing correctly, were you thinking about 3 to 4 years, then you were saying, before we get to the lodge?
I think it's probably in that timeline. It might be on the earlier side of that, because again, without getting too complicated on the phasing, we're gonna break ground hopefully by mid-year next year on what will be the first wave of housing, which again will start to solve a community need. That would take about a year to start turning buildings over. We now also, the housing starts to come on the market. In that phase would also be the first hotel. And really when that first hotel gets built, and that's only a 1-year build cycle itself, be more of a mid-size boutique hotel, but that'll have a food and beverage component to it, which means when we take the existing lodge out of service now, another thing I realized, where we had dropped the lodge and then rebuild it, there'd be no food and beverage component, a restaurant that the local community can actually utilize, throughout the year. So by pushing that to the second phase of construction, we'll actually have a new bar and restaurant in the first hotel that's built. Now, while the lodge is under construction, then the local folks will still have a bar and a restaurant on the mountain they can go to throughout the year while the existing lodge is under construction. So that's another thing we realized, where we dropped the lodge in phase 1, that there'd be a gap, serving the local community, from a food and beverage standpoint throughout that first year. So by doing it in the second phase, I think I'd probably say 3 years on the lodge. I say 3 to 4 because there's a second phase of a bigger hotel, which will have more of a gondola potentially coming up to existing lodge today, which will eventually be mid-mountain, and then continue up to the summit of the mountain. So this lodge will probably get built in year 3. The bigger hotel is probably going to be year 4, but this is kind of where we're at right now.
And in part I ask because on the one hand, I really want to see this happen. And at the same time, it's a little bit longer of an extension than we typically would give, or whatever site plan regulations typically afford. So I just wanted to raise that as an issue. And
yeah, I saw some of the time constraints when I read through all of the nomenclature. It's whatever's best for the town. I mean, obviously for me, I'm looking long term, so everything we're gonna do is, I would never try to compromise the short term. Everything we're gonna do is the best long term, successful, sustainable business plan for the mountain. So we can approach it whatever works best for the town. If we want to do multiple extensions, we can do that. If it's better to shut it down and then have me come back while we're through the master planning process and we actually get into construction, I can more accurately tell you when the building's going to be built. That can be done easily too. Whatever works better for the town.
I guess just to clarify one last thing before I open up to other questions. So it is, I mean, there are multiple stages of deadlines here, and the first one would be the conditions being met. And are we any way through that or not at this point? Or do you anticipate being through that before those 3 years? Or I'm just kind of curious
The
about
only
that.
things it wouldn't be would be looking for the landscape plan and the stormwater prevention plan. The stormwater prevention plan would be part of a master plan. That would probably come sooner, but the landscape plan wouldn't really come into play until we getting closer to building the actual lodge, you know, so that's one that's, you know, can certainly be met. I'm not trying to be dismissive of its importance. It's just that will be fairly easily met. You've got really ski slopes on 3 sides of the mountain, the south, the north, the west, so the east would actually be any applicable landscaping, you know, so that's something that would just be dealt with, which is one of the conditions. One of the other conditions, you're working with Plymouth Village Water and Sewer. We've already engaged them. We've already engaged at our expense engineers to assess the existing system. Even Plymouth Water and Sewer didn't really have a really good understanding of its use. We really couldn't find any real good engineered documents anywhere on file, so we've actually paid to have engineers, you know, assess it, look at it, some camera investigation, what's below ground, and even reworking what was, we've all now come to the conclusion, antiquated system. So we're redesigning what will be a better permanent solution, working with Plymouth Village Water and Sewer, as well as using what we have for expansion plans to inform even their growth, which we need to kind of work with them and you folks on, let's say the next, if we look 20, 30 years out for the town of Plymouth, what are those loads going to look like at that time? So we've already had the engineers working on that on our dime to work with Plymouth Village Water and Sewer, and those folks have been you know, great to work with, and it's a team effort, and we're making progress and all of that. So all of that will need to be done first, you know, before we get to that one condition on the landscape plan.
No, this is all, yeah, this is all great to hear, and I think we'll have to weigh like a lot of really interesting work that's being done against what is a bit of a stretch of our own site plan review guidelines about the timelines. And with that, we will have a public hearing as well in a couple of moments, but with that, I'll open it to the board for questions and comments.
Does this get noticed like a public hearing?
It did, yes, Joseph? Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So the question, is there an ask for a 3 to 4 year extension on the site plan review, or just a 1 year that we'd potentially look at again? I'm just trying to make sure I understand what's being asked for.
I guess I'm just trying to be open with you where we are in the process, right? If it's possible to ask for a 3 or 4, I'd say we would just ask for the 3 to 4 year. You know, if it's not, because what I've read is you can do a 1 year, you can do a 2 year on the zoning, you know, but they both expire in say 25 and 26 respectively. But if it's possible to ask for a 3 or 4 year, that gives us a little bit of flexibility till we get to the lodge, then we'd ask that. But if that's something that's not, you know, doable by the town, then we'll just look at, you know, whatever means are necessary to make that happen.
So can I ask a follow-up then? So you're in the process of hopefully doing in the master planning process for the whole site. Do you think, in all probability, your plan for the lodge will stay the same, or you think it might end up being changed in the process? Hard to say, I know probably, but I'm just kind of curious.
No, I want to be cautious with what I say always, because anything I say, I want to make sure I can deliver on. My goal right now would be to keep the lodge fundamentally the way it is. Programmatically, what we're looking at, just tweaking, which may have no bearing on you folks, is we need to solve for now a 4-season resort. So in the ski season, you're talking about rental programs, ski schools, things like that. But as you pivot to other seasons like mountain biking, you know, we need to make sure the same function and flow of the building can be supported for the different sports through the different seasons. So what I'd say, and from a holistic standpoint, what we've designed is what we want to build. If we were to make any changes to it, it would be, I'd say, more programmatic, but not significant from a structural or a design standpoint. So my plan would be still be to build what we've designed. That you folks have taken a look at, with the only exception of us maybe looking at the program and say, okay, should we bump with 5 extra feet of foundation over here, help us, which will allow for an interior room here, or something like that. But I'd say programmatically with, you know, having the elevator at the lower parking lot with a 2-story bridge connecting to the building with additions on all 4 corners, with the architecture that you folks have seen, with the bridge that we've designed, that's still fundamentally the same. I just hold on any reservation we may want to tweak, you know, a couple feet here or there if we actually find out that for some reason to make the programming work effectively, then we need to do that. That's the only caveat that I put out there.
Okay, thank you.
So I couldn't see you asked that question, or what the better way to do is if we want to ask for 3 or 4 year now or not. I'd say that's probably when we're gonna build it. So I just ask you folks to, let us know what's the best way to accommodate that. We can ask for a 3 to 4 year extension, or we can just do it, come back a year from now and try, do it 1 year, one extension at a time. I know there's I think if I read it correctly, you're allowed to do at this level, 1 year extension, and then there are other extensions allowed as long as you have a public hearing on that. So like I said, defer to you folks, what's better for you?
Phil, did you have a comment?
My only question, I guess, is that, recognizing that there are still conditions to be met, if we were to extend the deadline to 36 months from the date of approval for the conditions and then 48 months for start of construction, would that suffice, or are you looking for 3 to 4 years on top of where we are now?
I think that would be plenty of time, especially the 48 for the start of construction, because the reality is we're gonna get through that first phase, within 24 months, and the plan will be to jump right into this lodge in particular after that. The bigger hotel may wait, but you guys haven't even seen anything on there yet. So I think that is sufficient time for us to get that. If we have a 40 month extension on the construction and 36 on the
Conditions?
conditions.
I am very uncomfortable issuing an extension for that long. I think that puts it out too far for the board of the future. And any zoning changes, any state statute changes that might come into play in the next 3 or 4 years. What I'm hearing here, and I hear that the lodge, the intention is for it to stay within the same footprint, that it's really just going to be how the space gets used that may change. I just think to me, it doesn't make sense for us to issue a long extension when this phase is kind of a side phase while there's going to be other development that happens. To me, that just doesn't quite make sense. And then did abutters get noticed for this too? I mean, I feel like, sure, we could just keep every year issuing another extension if that's what we choose to do. I also think that, there sounds like there very likely could be some changes as this business operates for the next couple of years. There could be some changes that, there may be, a site plan review amendment that needs to happen as well. And I think it makes sense for the board to, if we want to consider an extension for 1 year, let's do this incrementally so we're not hamstringing ourselves.
I'd
several
actually
years
to
down the road.
throw a caveat in there as well. One thing we're also toying around with, and I say it's as recently the last couple of weeks, is with our intent to really, hopefully, and we're just waiting on the engineers to finalize it, and then we're going to be going right into procurement because there's a bit of a lead time on the equipment. But our hope for opening next year is that we'll revamp the entire snowmaking system, which is all new electric motors and drives, all new efficient, all new pipeline. We talked about a lot more guns. We already added $500,000 worth of guns. We're probably at least 2x that. So we're making a lot more snow. So one thing we are playing around with is if we take the proposed lodge, which you've already approved, we might say, you know what, we could actually do the additions, because without you guys looking at it, I'll just tell you there's additions on all 4 corners of the building. So the existing footprint somewhat stays the same, but there's additions on all 4 corners, because they actually, the way the foundation lays out is more like a tic-tac-toe box, if you want to do it like that. So you fill in all 4 of those gaps with additions, one big one on the front. So we're thinking we could still put those additions on this year, which would open up the first floor from capacity for rentals, which would now you could have a lot more skiers actually renting on the mountain. So even though we might push the bigger development of the whole lodge out, we might come back to you this year and say, you know what, we might want to throw the additions on these 2 or 3 corners, which allows the functionality of the building to really start to, increase in terms of capacity. For those familiar with it, the first floor is got the administrative office located on it, so it's going right. We can pull all the admin offices out, throw additions on those 2 corners, we'll put the admin offices into some trailers off-site. That now allows to have a ski school on Tenny, allows for rentals on Tenny, which is obviously all just to try to add to the community when they come up. They'll be able to ski much more easily without having to, get skis off-site, and then also have a school there where for folks who are maybe not as experienced, because Tenny is not an easy mountain to ski for people who have no experience. So we're toying around that idea, so I don't want you to think we're just trying to defer the costs. We're looking at more programmatically, what does the community need, what can we solve for today? It 100% needs, now that I've actually operated the mountain for you, the whole mountain needs to be replaced, the pipe. For those who don't know, we started pressurizing the pipe to make snow this year, and it should hold 1,100 PSI, and the pipe unfortunately is 40 plus years old, had not been maintained, and we were blowing pipe all over the mountain in the middle of the winter, which means you have to shut the snowmaker down, weld and fix pipe, and you're fixing pipe that can't hold pressure. So it's really running very inefficiently, and for those who have skied it, still we've got huge acclaim about how great a job we did, getting a limited amount of snow that we had from Mother Nature on top of what we could make on the mountain. So we've had the whole mountain open for now a month, which has been great. But the plan would be to replace all that pipe, all the infrastructure, so we can make that snow. And now when we can do that, we could actually have a much better skier experience if we can actually expand the ability to have rentals and a ski school on property, which is again just something we've been looking at, like what does the community really need. So it's not so much that we're deferring. The bigger expense of that lodge is going to be see what you see above the foundation. Foundation could be the same, but it's when you get into all the knocking down of the building, all the new steel, all the new structural timber, all the new super efficient MEP systems and new kitchen that's going to go in. That's the bigger part of expense. It's not necessarily just in the foundation. So we've been toying around, maybe throwing some of the foundations in. So I don't want you to think that we're kicking it completely down the road 3 or 4 years.
So I guess what I'm hearing a lot of exciting ideas, and I want to facilitate what's going on here. And at the same time, I'm hearing a whole lot of uncertainty about like where we're actually at in this process and what your short and long-term plans actually look like. And yeah, does anybody else on the board want to speak to this? Neil?
Why can't he put his foundation in now? Or this year? Why can't we give him a 1-year extension to put his foundation in?
I don't think we're saying we're not going to do that.
Okay. I heard him mention Melvin Road, and that's a town road, and that connects to Tenny Mountain Road. Can you elaborate on what you plan to do with the connection between Melvin Road and Tenny Mountain Road?
Sure. Tenny Mountain Road comes in off of Mayhew Turnpike, which is the main entrance of Tenny Mountain Resort. As it moves kind of at an S-curve up north of the property, it continues, and there's a culvert that blew out back in 2010 during Hurricane Katrina. I think most of you are familiar with that road, maybe you're not, but really it's been gone. So that road has been shut down now for really since 2010. And a lot of folks in town are very familiar with it. That's really where it connects to Melvin Road. So Melvin Road, further north on Mayhew Turnpike comes up, and that's where the 2 roads intersect. So the town has maintained Melvin Road up to a point, but it's really degraded down beyond basis. You got exposed boulders, dirt. I mean, if anyone's ever tried to drive up there, it's not even simple with a 4-wheel drive car. The truck will get bounced around on those boulders. So we looked at what would it take to really fix that road, and we've actually had the engineers working with us on this entire process to assess what could be done temporarily versus not. And really the determination on Melvin Road is there's nothing you can really do right now unless you're to rip it out and do a complete box cut, get all the boulders out of there, and establish a really good, long-term base. Something we want to work with the town on is, as the community develops up here, if we're going to replace the roads, one of our thoughts is we should be looking at possibly having pedestrian, sidewalks as part of that, expansion, for a longer term, walking community where people can, walk around. So there's a bigger picture that we're looking at with the roads, but Melvin Road, right now, if you just drive it or walk it, and encourage you all to do so, it was done long before I bought the property. It's been in disrepair. So we're looking at what we can maybe do for the local community to, put a little bit of a Band-Aid on that, but it's really, really challenging because there's no inexpensive solution that's not just going to get ripped out when we actually want to do it the right way with proper drainage in the future.
Yeah, thank you. it's a little bit kind of tangential to this particular site plan review. I was kind of curious to hear the answer, though, so I kind of figured I'd let it go. But that's for the board, I guess.
It should be noted that we put almost $200,000 already in for road improvements up there at the behest of the community who was asking for last year's meetings. So we went around and addressed all of the critical areas that we could, grinded them down, repaved them. So if anyone hasn't been up there, I encourage you to drive up Davis Road and Tenny Mountain Road. We were able to get rid of the majority of the significant challenges on those roads. So people have given us a lot of praise who have driven those roads. Unfortunately, there's no real easy solution on Melvin Road, but we are going to revisit that in the spring and see if there's something that can be done for, I'll say, the most difficult areas.
So, thank you. And I'd say, going forward, let's kind of stay off the roads a bit. Not just literally, but just to kind of focus on the site plan review itself, and
Sure.
whether or not we want to extend it. Yes, Mike?
How would the existing, and Steve, I appreciate everything you're doing. I believe the town is very much behind you, and I think the concepts that you are tackling right now seems to make sense rather than the building right off. If we have an application to build the building the way that it sits on the plans, and he wants to make modifications to that, how does that jive with the existing approval he's got? Is that something we can still do? And just to give my second thought, I'd be in favor of giving the 2 years, so he doesn't have to come back next year. At least 2 years for him to come back and tell us what's changing. I don't know if the plan for the structure, the third item is, I'm not sure if the plan for the structure is good to know that, what's gonna happen in the future for the hotel and,
I mean, my own thought there would be, personally, I would definitely want to see at least like some kind of compliance hearing or something. And
in a year or 2 years.
we can talk about that. I mean, assuming that we'd even be okay with that, I'd want to, and things did change, I would definitely want to like see it come back before us, even just to talk about those changes. And frankly, I think some things made it through last time that should have had a compliance hearing as well, that we put off on our town planning department. But that's already a done deal, so I'm not going to like re-enter that. But anyway, that would be, I would say at the very least, if we gave an extension, anything did change, I would want to at least have them come back to talk about that.
Well, there'd need to be, if there's a change to what we approve, there would need to be an amendment to the site plan
Yeah.
review, which would require a public hearing.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm fully aware of all that. I mean, when we're talking about changes, like, we're gonna really dig deep on, let's just say, the kitchen. If you look at the list prior submittal, the kitchen's a 2-floor kitchen, and we just wanna make sure it flows. So let's just say we say, all right, we need 2 more feet to make it perfect. Well, at this point, I'd do the 2 more feet, would resubmit, go for approval, would do all that. When I say it's small, it doesn't, maybe it doesn't sound small, but to me, that's a small thing. Like, well, we need to look at programmatically to make sure the building functions the way we want it to function. We put a lot of work and effort into it. We're just revisiting that from a functionality standpoint and say, all right, is this really what we want to build? So example, just yesterday, I had Brian McCann, my chief of staff, was on, pull out the last kitchen design, and we have a couple of chefs that we're working with who are gonna beat the hell out of that design and say, you know what? This is 100% great, works awesome, we love it. Or they might say, you know what, if we had 3 more feet here, 2 more feet here, if that's what was the case, that's what we would do, is resubmit with an extra 2 or 3 feet. But they might say, no, there's enough room in here to make this work. So when I talk about like changes, we're not talking what you folks would see as I don't think a large scale change. It's more programmatically, do we need anything different before we, become beholden to a footprint?
And just to be clear, right, those would only be changes that would change the footprint or the exterior of the building. Anything on the inside does not really concern us anyway on the
Correct.
planning board.
So to finish up my first part of the question is.
I'm sorry, Mike, yeah.
If he wanted to just come in and just bump out a couple of the corners, as he talked about, just to get the building by for the 3 or 4 years, how does that affect the existing approval he already has? Would that,
so doing a partial implementation of what he's already presented and what we've approved.
partial but
Right.
different?
Is that partial, or would that be something completely different that would be a tear down for a new building anyway?
I mean, that's, I mean, the-
No, what we would do is we would take the drawings you guys have already seen, since if we know we're going to build that, like, two of the corners are actually baked, we know we're building them. So let's just say, if you look up at Tenny Mountain Lodge, you're at the bottom of the hill, on the left-hand side, there are two corners that were both getting bumped out, and those aren't even in question about being moved. It's the right side where the kitchen is, and how it's gonna function over there, particularly if we start to do rentals and some other things. We're kinda just looking at that side and revisiting if we're gonna move it. So what I would do is I would take the existing plan that you guys have already approved, would build the two corners, which are on the left-hand side of the building, at a minimum. What that allows us on the first floor to do is vacate the administrative offices, but open up all of that square footage, which now gives us function and flow to put a whole rental program in there, to put a whole ski school in there. And it's just the other side we might bump out too, because our kitchen, for those who are familiar with it, is somewhat undersized and old the way it was designed. Or putting the addition that we've already proposed on the back side of that building, which would be chipping back into the ledge there, but that's what we do. That's all already been approved. If we built that now, it gives our kitchen much more flexibility. And of course, we'll go through some sort of permit process for this, but just from a planning standpoint, if you visualize it. On the left-hand side, the southern part of the building, those two corners get bumped out. Now, what we'll do is put a temp roof in. By temp, I just mean it's eventually gonna look different with a different type of roof structure up there, but we'd have roof with decking and rails even for now, which opens up to the community for another 3 to 4 years. That's on the riverside. And on the back right side, which is uphill on the second floor, we'd build a footprint to the addition as though we're building the current building as proposed, so that when we actually go to build that building, the foundation is mostly already done, with the exception of that front right corner, where people come up the stairs and enter the building. We don't want to disrupt that yet. So we're just talking about the last 3 weeks, saying, yeah, we could probably actually get that done, which now makes the whole building much more productive, from a community flow standpoint, what they can do on the mountain. A lot of the critique we get is,
Stephen?
there's not enough school here, and there's not enough rentals here. So we're thinking around it, what can we do now in the short term while we're still focused on all the other things we already talked about?
I appreciate you're trying to think this through. What I'm trying to think through right now is, if you did bump those out, how many square feet would that actually be? Would that be enough to trigger a site plan review? And if so, that would probably mean we have to have our conditions met before you even started to do that. Am I thinking through this correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, and I feel like I'm having a tough time when we're getting a lot of responses from the applicants right now, and I think we need to have a little
Yeah.
bit more board discussion. Because I think some of these, we're dealing in a lot of either side projects, next phases, or
what if partial
or
phases?
hypotheticals. And I think it might be helpful for us to maybe keep the conversation amongst the board right now, just to think about, these hypotheticals and what we're willing to do. Because I think, we're not here to talk about the support of this project and how much we might like, and many of us, all of us, really like what's happening there, but that's not what we're talking about now. And what we need to talk about is whether is an extension, and what that extension might look like, and how to best protect the interests of the town, while not making an undue burden for the applicant as he's trying to develop and redevelop this valuable asset in the town.
At the same time, I do think it's important to clarify some of those potential questions about building parts of it out early, and if that's even feasible. And I'm not sure the board even has to answer that tonight necessarily, but it's worth considering.
Yeah, I
in
was
terms
only
of-
bringing it up because you folks asking where we're going at. I'm just giving you everything it's live as this week. We were talking about those additions and projects re-engaging the act. So just only let you guys know, we would resubmit a separate plan for you folks, say this is what we're thinking. We
So-
know that's part of the plan.
We're gonna talk for a few minutes, and then we're gonna open up a public hearing. So, members of the board, other thoughts, questions for us, among ourselves here?
I think, sorry, may I speak?
You may.
Again. I think a 1-year extension makes the most sense. I think there's enough variables and enough unknowns that regardless of whether there are changes which would trigger an amendment to the site plan review or changes to the entire project, I just feel like 1 year these things are gonna have to get noticed anyway, and to have something hanging out there for multiple years, I just feel like is maybe just a little bit too big of an unchecked box for us.
And just to clarify there, even if the assumption is we these can't be met in 1 year, it at least allows us for a check-in to see where we stand and all of that. And I do believe our site plan regulations say we can offer up to 1 extension, although insofar as they are our site plan review regulations, we can also waive that.
Yeah, so the site plan regulations do say, in each event, so development and conditions, the board can give a 1-year extension, but as you said, upon a request for a waiver, the board has the right to do so. It's the board's discretion. Although that would need to be in writing,
Yeah.
which can be, provided at
Mike?
any time.
So I think the fear from an applicant is, I've got this approval, I don't want to lose it, and I want to, as long as, but this board and the town is so happy, like what Rebecca said, but I'd love to hear what the public has to say.
So before we open up the public hearing, any other comments or questions from the board?
I'm concerned about the connection between Melvin Road and Tenny Mountain Road.
So Neil, this is the.
Yeah, that's not even part of the site plan.
That is an important issue up there for sure, and it's not in the scope of our site plan review here.
Okay.
I do agree it's an important issue, but
We had
yeah.
that discussion in the initial site plan review, is that those roads are not part of this site or site plan.
Okay.
My observation is that if the applicant were to meet the conditions of approval, he would still have, 12 months from now to achieve active and substantial development. I believe pouring a foundation within the next 12 months would basically put him in compliance with the existing site plan without need for an extension.
Or we can extend both.
Right, I mean, that's my feeling. I mean, I would like to offer the applicant the security of an extension just because there's a lot going on. And I would like
Is
to
that a
afford him
motion?
that.
No, I mean, we have to have a public hearing
Oh,
anyway.
yeah, it's not yet, but, anyway, yeah, let's open it up to the public.
And then if things do change, they can always come in with a new application anyway.
Yeah.
And if they say the same, we have an
Yeah, I mean,
extension.
Things
Yeah.
may change so much he may want to do an
Yeah.
amendment.
Exactly. Okay. It is 7:12. I will open a public hearing. If any members of the public would like to speak to this extension of this site plan approval, please come up to the podium and identify yourself and ask your question or make your comment.
Hi, my name is Gardner Hall. I'm an abutter. Hey, Stephen. I'm actually happy to hear that Stephen is changing his focus away from the lodge, which isn't quite a peripheral, but it's sort of, because the main focus really should be on the infrastructure for the actual skiing, and that includes lifts, trails, snowmaking. That's where the money's made. After you have that, then the lodge comes into play, and anybody that's ever been to the Bunyan Room at Loon Mountain, you know what kind of money you can make in the lodge. But you only make that because the skiing is there. So I'm very happy to hear that the focus has come around to what I would recommend. And but obviously the lodge is an important part when the whole thing is put together. And I want to let everybody know that I fully support what Stephen is doing. And I'm very optimistic that he's going to bring Tenny back to life. And not only that, push it forward to its full capacity, which would be a major ski area in the town of Plymouth and a community out off of 3A, which it would benefit everybody. So that's my feeling on it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gardner.
Anyone else would like to speak?
I think the request for the extension is reasonable and in keeping with the town's policies. I agree with the 1-year extension because we don't get too far out ahead of ourselves, and there's a lot of administrative things that happen that's beyond the control of this board that would put yourself in a predicament to not be able to finalize something that happens 2 years from now. So a 1-year extension, I believe, is preferred. Thank you.
Thank you. And not that you need an introduction necessarily, but Frank Miller. Just to identify yourself. Anyone else would like to speak?
Anyone online?
Is there anyone online? Yeah, good question. Besides our applicant, that
We
is.
do have a couple of other parties online, but
So-
neither has unmuted themselves.
If you'd like to speak, and you're online on Zoom, please unmute yourself and speak. Okay. All right. So, no one else? All right. So it is 7:15, and I will close the public hearing. So, back to us on the board here, and so Joseph, it's your recommendation for an extension as well, we should do findings of fact?
I would say yes, since there would be a written decision generated by the
Okay.
extension, yeah, findings
Okay.
of fact would be good.
Thank you.
I would offer the first finding of fact that the applicant is making a good faith effort to look at many of the issues beyond the details of the site plan at hand, and his reprioritization is in line with good planning.
Yes.
We should probably have some kind of finding about the current conditions of approval as well, I imagine.
There have been, so a finding of fact would be that we don't have substantial development on site, and that the conditions on the approval have not been met at this point.
That is important.
Anything else? Probably don't need to be quite as thorough for an extension as for an initial approval, but.
Just a question under the, thinking about the special exception from the ZBA, that's, a 1-year extension is allowed for the ZBA in our zoning ordinance.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So that would they'd need to get a variance to get an extension. I mean, you would just go for another special exception, you wouldn't do.
Yeah, so the special exception right now expires in March of '25, which is the same year that the active and substantial development expires
Okay.
from the original planning board approval. But the ZBA is allowed to grant one-year extension, and like you
Okay.
said, they can only grant 1 year without,
Going through the process again, yeah.
I'd like to say that he's made substantial progress in getting the ski area up and running and getting the skiing going, which is the most important part. So he's on his way. He has a plan.
Are we ready for a motion?
I think so.
Do we want to talk about, before we make a motion, extending the substantial development for 1 or 2 years? Or sorry, not extending it. I guess it would be just extend it for 1 year, or just leave it where it is.
I'd be willing to do both for a year, for an extra
That
year.
would be my thought as well.
I agree with that.
I agree with that.
All right, so hearing that, I will move that we extend to 24 months the period of time to meet the conditions of approval, and then extend to 36 months from the date of approval, the deadline to achieve active and substantial development.
I'll second that. Oops, sorry.
So we have a motion and a second to,
Second.
we got it.
Oh, you got a second?
We do. And is there any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the extension is approved. Look forward to hearing or seeing more.
All right, guys, thank you very much, appreciate your time.
Thank you, thank you.
Stay safe. Keep it up.
All right.
I don't remember.
So, coming up next, we have an application for a conditional use permit for an accessory dwelling unit.
It hasn't, my understanding.
We haven't done it.
But I know he did contact us.
Okay.
Parcel 208017. Application from Emily Finney and Christopher Leston to construct a one-bedroom accessory dwelling unit on the property at 219 Fairgrounds Road. And reminder to the board that we have some zoning amendments under consideration this spring, and that will be on the ballot in March. That could change some of these parameters, and the applicant, I believe, is fully aware of this and wants to go forward
John,
as is now.
As a point of order,
Yes.
I believe there is a requirement that once we move a zoning amendment to town meeting, we have to treat it as if it's in effect until the election.
I don't know if it's required or we can treat it as if
believe
it's in effect.
required.
I thought we could treat it as if it's in effect. If it's,
So,
Because I think it's to prevent people from, you know, there's also a time limit. You can't do, we can't, we can't adopt something in May and basically have it in effect for the entire year until the next town meeting. But I believe that since we've met the time schedule, I'm not actually sure we can approve a conditional use permit because we have a proposed change that would require it to go to special exception.
I thought we could.
so
Can you clarify, Joseph?
the statute that I'm aware of that deals with that, RSA 676:12, does provide that a building permit shall not be issued prior to town meeting once a public hearing has been held on an amendment that would, if adopted, justify refusal of such a permit. So my understanding is that it works.
We can still approve the conditional use permit,
Approvals.
but
But you could not grant a
building permit.
building permit for something that would be not permitted under proposed changes. That's my understanding.
So if we're putting a
they
hurdle
would
in
be-
place to make something more difficult, then
We're just
that can be
changing
used
it.
ahead of time, and you can't approve that. However, if we're actually easing something, it does not impact this.
This,
Which zone is it though?
he's in
It's
the
the ag
ag
zone.
zone.
Agricultural.
So would that be going, is this
It's in
one of the
So we're
changes that would
easing,
make it by?
so
by-
we're easing the restriction,
Okay.
in which
By
case,
right in the ag zone?
yes, in which case,
He would
by the
be-
language Joseph just cited, it would not,
Oh, yeah, you're right.
it would
Okay.
not actually,
Thank you.
I think the
I
only,
just wasn't sure if it was single family, because it would require, if it was single family, it would require special
The-
exception.
only challenge would be if the applicant is proposing one parking space.
yes. And we can-
Because
we
our
can get to
current
that, yeah.
zoning does not allow for that. But we have an amendment in there that would allow for just one parking space.
Yes. All right.
All right.
With all that being said.
Thank you.
Thank
That was-
and thank
I'm
you for
glad we
reminding us of
addressed
that issue,
question.
Phil.
It's also in the staff report.
Thank you. Good
Um,
thing you're prepared.
Would anyone like to speak to this application? If you would, please come up to the podium.
The applicant, right?
Yes, yes.
All right. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all right. It's been a long day.
I don't know, I mean, I don't know if you have any questions, but
Um,
we're just looking to.
So you're looking to create an ADU. And if you just want to, I mean, we have a report here in your application. If you just want to say a few words, to introduce it, like what your intentions are, or what the general plan is going forward.
So we have a detached garage that sits on an existing slab that we're gonna build, restore the garage and make it a one-bedroom, one-bathroom livable space.
Mm-hmm.
We're probably gonna go up about 4 feet so that we can have a loft area, for storage. I guess my question is, if any of those plans change, like if the footprint should change, do we have to come back and reapply? We had looked at extending it past the slab, but I think we're going back to just building off
Okay.
what's existing right now, so the footprint will remain the same.
So the footprint will more than likely remain the same?
More than likely right now, but I guess we just had a question if something should change. Do we have to reapply?
You'd probably have to come before us just for a change, even though it's not a full site plan review.
Unless you wait until the end of March.
Unless you wait till the end of March.
Yeah, things change, so.
Oh, assuming that it gets voted through, but yeah.
Actually, by the time we have our next meeting, it's gonna be after town meeting anyway, and we'll have the answer to that question.
Um,
So we can approve this now, and if he changes it, then, and if things are approved, then it's accepted by right. If not, he can come back to us by then for a change
You
then.
have good timing.
Does that make sense that, so after, if the zoning ordinance changes, then you wouldn't need to come before the planning board for a conditional use permit?
You just go
You
get a
just get a building
building
permit. And so I feel like if you are making changes, I would communicate with the town staff to just, and that's Joseph, and he could make a recommendation, if that amendment doesn't pass. Sorry, I rolled my eyes there, because it's a one that should pass.
So I would say at this point, assuming we approve this evening, and your plan is to go ahead as proposed, just go ahead as proposed. If you do decide to change something, let's not even talk about that yet, because it seems like you probably won't.
Yep.
But if you do decide you want to change something, come back into the town hall and talk to Joseph, and he can give you some guidance on the laws and all that.
But don't do it until after town meeting, because it won't matter. You won't be able to get an answer until then anyway.
Sure.
Well, yeah, our next public hearing isn't until
Right.
after town meeting anyway, so.
But he made it, but if all the zoning amendments pass, he doesn't have to come to us anyway, he just files the building permit application.
So do we have questions for the applicant?
We're trying to make this easier.
Yeah, great.
So can you actually speak to the curb cut driveway, number of parking spaces for this?
There is no curb,
Okay.
so it's a dirt driveway. One parking space, right now it's a single car garage, so it's just a driveway strip. Pulls right up to the front of the property.
To be clear, curb cut is basically, there's not gonna be an additional driveway onto Fairgrounds Road. And so there is one parking, do we have a parking, and this is where it gets complicated. We need to make sure there's enough parking spaces on site.
I think there's room enough for more.
There is room for more. We have two garages. One is attached to the house, so there's parking for us, and then there's a driveway for the detached garage as well.
And these are both permitted driveways?
Yes,
Okay.
Existing.
they're dirt driveways. But
I mean, they still have to be permitted through, and that's DOT.
It's a
and
state
Fairgrounds,
highway.
yeah.
Is the detached garage, I can't see the width, is that a single car garage door with a door, or is that a 16-foot wide garage door for two cars?
So you're looking at the white garage.
The red one,
The red is
detached.
a single door.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's likely still needs a driveway permit on I would think, on the ADU.
But it is a driveway. It's a
It's an
garage.
existing-
Change of use. Any change of use, you need a driveway
You have to
permit.
get it from the state.
Yeah, that,
Yeah.
District engineers out of Canaan. I wouldn't see a problem.
No, I think it would be fine, but yeah,
Just
believe that a driveway-
change of use.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, but with our approval comes the, all state and local.
Actually, and before we get too far, since this is an application, we should first accept the application and then talk about whether or not we want to get ahead, before we get ahead of ourselves too far here. So that's the process. First, we're gonna see if we can accept the application as complete, and then
Can
we'll,
we accept the application as complete?
I just want to,
Second,
a motion and a second. Any further
I'm just
discussion,
thinking
Rebecca?
about, we've got to follow our own rules.
We
We've
do.
determined that our rules we need to change our rules. The ADU will have sufficient off-street parking, all parking shall meet the train zone and standings and parameters for two-family home, no new curb cut, so it's existing. Yeah, all right. I'm good.
Okay. Any further comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so we've accepted the application as complete. And so now to the order of business of approval, and we'll have a public hearing before then, of course. Are there any further comments or questions from the board before going to public hearing? Okay. In that case, I'm gonna say it is 7:31, and I will open a public hearing. If any members of the public would like to speak to this application. Anybody on Zoom who would like to speak to this application? All right. It is still 7:31, and I will close the public hearing. So, members of the board, we should probably start thinking about approval and, of course, about conditions of approval.
What is the square footage for an ADU?
No bigger than 1,000 square feet.
1,000, okay, good.
And
And it is the red detached garage that he's looking to go up 4 feet?
Yeah, that's right.
can we just clarify that we meet all dimensional requirements? It is not a very large piece of land. And do we meet all the setbacks and all that? Yes?
I can see from the,
I'm on the wrong page.
There's this.
Ah, there it is, okay. 15, yeah.
Is it
45.
town sewer?
There is a note. The applicant did contact Water and Sewer, and Water and Sewer said that they don't make decisions until planning board grants approval, so.
so again, that's gonna be a
Right.
conditional, if we grant approval, it'll be conditional upon
Right.
water and sewer, and any of the required permits and et cetera.
And you're looking for a separate hookup for that, it looks like, right?
It sounds like the water and sewer specified that they did
Yeah.
a separate. So it meets all the requirement or the criteria for the accessory dwelling unit for our zoning ordinance.
Is that a finding of fact?
Yes, that was a finding of fact.
Very broad and inclusive finding effect.
I mean, I can
But
list,
indeed
I
true.
can list all of
Indeed
them
true. No, no,
individually
no,
if you
no,
want.
no, no.
There we
It's
go,
okay.
I got a lot of them.
It's all good.
Fire department's okay with it?
I mean, I think you said dimensional requirements, so, yeah. We do have another finding of fact that with the proposed zoning amendments that are going to town meeting in March, this, I'm not sure if I'm gonna phrase this correctly, so bear with me. This application would not be refused under the new zoning nor under the current zoning. That's what, it just says that's, I'm reading right out of the. Planner report.
Oh, I see.
All right.
I would offer the finding of fact that if the proposed zoning amendments are approved, this conditional use permit will not be required at all.
Is that a rewording of Rebecca's?
No, he's saying that we wouldn't need to do this.
Oh, okay.
It would, if
Yeah.
it would be allowed by right.
Yes.
Without conditional use permit.
Got it,
So I think that helps to clarify the conflict around the proposed zoning change.
Well, ultimately, right now, it's still in effect.
Yes.
I would say yeah, okay. Right.
Yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with that.
I would make a motion that we approve this accessory dwelling unit application with the following condition that, let's see here, the applicant will submit a water and sewer connection permit application to the Plymouth Village Water and Sewer District for their review and approval.
What about driveway?
Driveway?
The driveway permit.
And applicant will obtain any other local and state required permits.
So that was a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second for conditional approval of this application. And is there any further discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Approved. Thank you very much and good luck.
Yet more evidence that the zoning amendment we have on the table for next month is an excellent one.
A good one.
Yes.
All right. Looking around the room and Zoom, I'm going to say we probably do not have any informational or pre-application reviews, Joseph?
None that I'm aware of.
None that I'm aware of. Okay. Other business from members of the board and planning staff. Discussion of potential amendment to Plymouth subdivision regulation pertaining to standards and requirements for open space residential development. I'm just going to say if anybody has any comments about that, we can have a brief discussion. We do not have an updated draft at this point. And just thinking about the timeline going forward, it's worth considering, depending on how long our public information Q&A session goes at our next meeting on March 7th, assuming we have a draft of these regulations, to have a look at those before the meeting is out, assuming the discussion doesn't last till like 9:30 or something. And I think it would be worth, just for the timeline, because if at that point we look at them and we say, yeah, it's good, or maybe a few more tweaks, we're still going to have to notice for a public hearing and get the finalized language out for a public hearing before we can adopt. And so it's going to be a process still and a series of steps. And just to have it in place as soon as possible with potential amendments going through that will take it out of our zoning ordinance. If we do have the time at our next meeting, it would be good for us to take a look at that.
When does the Barrett contract expire for Grant?
June.
June?
Yeah. I believe it's the end of June, right?
I believe it is June 31.
This goes to our attorney before, do we send our site plan?
We would need
Okay.
to, yeah.
So just as part of that review, I'm just getting back to the court case from 6 years ago. If our attorney is still John Radigan, he made some recommendations on what we should do, and I'm wondering if we could make that a part of this process, just to make, I feel like he's gonna know better than, I have a note here that says natural resources under section, or Article 1, Section C, and I feel like that might be better come from him to make recommendations that, whatever, through that court and appeal process, what we needed to do to tighten up something in there. I think that would make sense.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can make other changes too. I mean, the only, the big discussion we've had has been the OSRD, but, the public process would be, the board would make any more tweaks that, they want to make, and then we'd send it to the attorney, and then, we'd look at that, and then we could post that language for a public hearing. But
Mhm. Okay, so hopefully we'll be able to have that discussion soon. And are there any public comments?
No, but the public would be in favor of adjournment.
Are there any other public comments?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Phil. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
I second it.